I heard moaning on the balcony and pulled the curtain aside. My fiancée was there with a guy from downstairs. She locked eyes with me and didn't stop. That moment I got home later than usual that night. Not late enough to justify the silence, but late enough for the apartment to feel unfamiliar. The hallway lights were dimmed, the kind of automatic setting the building switched to after 10. My footsteps sounded heavier than normal, as if the place already knew something I didn't. Before I even took my shoes off, I heard it. At first it registered as noise from outside. Balconies carried sound strangely in this building. Laughter drifted up from the courtyard all the time. Music bounced off concrete and glass. I told myself it was that. I told myself it was anything but what it actually was. Then it happened again. The sound was close. Too close. Not below. Not across. It came from the direction of the living room, from the thin strip of glass that separated our apartment from the balcony. I stood still. I did not call out. I did not move forward immediately. That pause lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it stretched longer than the entire day that came before it. I remember noticing how quiet everything else was. No television. No running water. No movement inside the apartment except for me. I walked to the curtain slowly, already knowing what I would see, but still needing to see it to make it real. When I pulled the fabric aside, there was no confusion. Lena was there, bare feet on the balcony tiles we picked together, her hands on the railing, her back to the glass. A man stood behind her, close enough that his presence erased any remaining doubt. I recognized him immediately. Paul, the guy from 2 floors down, the one who always nodded in the elevator, always acted like we shared a small joke I never quite understood. Lena turned her head first. Her eyes met mine through the glass. Fully open, fully aware. There was no shock, no scrambling, no instinctive retreat. She saw me clearly, and she did not stop. That moment did something irreversible to my perception of time. Everything slowed down and sharpened at once. I noticed details that should not have mattered. The scratch on the balcony railing. The faint reflection of my own face in the glass. The way Paul froze only after he realized he had been seen, while Lena remained still, as if this outcome had already been rehearsed. I slid the door open. The air outside was colder than inside, the kind of cold that bites only after you notice it. Paul stepped back immediately, hands lifting in a reflexive gesture that had nothing to do with apology and everything to do with self-preservation. Lena finally moved then, not away from him, but toward the apartment. She brushed past me without touching me, walked straight inside, and headed for the bathroom. She closed the door and locked it. That was it. No explanation. No denial. No collapse. Just a closed door and the sound of running water. Paul stood there, suddenly too visible, suddenly unsure of where to look. He started speaking fast, trying to fill the silence with justification, but I barely registered the words. What stuck was one simple fact buried in his rambling explanation. He thought I had already moved out. That single detail rearranged everything. According to him, Lena had told him weeks ago that the engagement was effectively over, that I came by occasionally to grab things, that the apartment was mostly hers now, that tonight was safe because I was supposedly out of town. The lie was clean, practical, useful. I walked back inside without acknowledging him and grabbed my jacket from the chair where I always left it. My phone buzzed in my pocket as if on cue. I did not answer it immediately, but I saw the name. Marilyn, Lena's sister. The phone buzzed again. And again. I looked back toward the bathroom door. The water was still running. Lena was not coming out. She was buying time. I stepped back onto the balcony, leaned over the railing, and told Paul to leave. I did not raise my voice. I did not threaten him. I told him calmly that if he stayed another minute, things would get complicated in ways he would not enjoy. He did not argue. As he passed me, he said one more thing without realizing its weight. He mentioned that Lena had been careful, that she always talked about timing, about exit plans, about how things had to line up before she made any move. That was when it became clear this was not a moment of impulse. This was a scheduled failure. Paul left. The balcony door closed behind him. The apartment felt hollow immediately, like a stage after the actors walk off. The bathroom door remained shut. I answered Marilyn's call. She did not ask questions. She did not sound confused. She asked where Lena was and whether I was calm. That alone told me how much of this story had already been pre-written. I told her Lena was in the bathroom and that I was fine. I ended the call before she could say anything else. I did not wait for Lena to come out. Instead, I went to the bedroom and opened the closet. Her side was cleaner than usual. Gaps where clothes should have been. Hangers spaced too evenly. That was when I noticed my duffel bag was missing. The one I used for short trips. The one she would never need herself. I checked the coat closet. Then the storage bench. Then the trunk of her car. The parking garage smelled like oil and dust. Her car unlocked with a soft beep that echoed too loudly in the concrete space. When I opened the trunk, the bag was there. packed neatly, shoes folded inside, toiletries sealed in plastic. Everything arranged with intention. This bag was not for me. This bag was for her. I closed the trunk slowly and leaned against the car for a moment, letting the shape of the situation settle. She had planned multiple outcomes, different versions depending on who discovered what and when. Tonight just happened to be the wrong discovery at the wrong time. When I went back upstairs, the bathroom door was open. The water was off. Lena stood in the living room fully dressed, phone in hand, posture composed. She looked like someone preparing for a meeting, not someone whose life had just detonated. She did not apologize. She did not accuse me. She said my name, carefully, as if testing how it sounded now that everything had changed. I walked past her, unplugged the router, and slipped it into my bag. I took my laptop next, then the folder from the drawer where we kept paperwork, lease documents, insurance information, the engagement ring appraisal. She watched me the entire time, silent, calculating. I told her I would not be staying the night. I told her not to touch anything that belonged to me. I told her we would speak again very soon, but not on her timeline. She finally reacted then, not with emotion, but with urgency. Her composure cracked just enough to reveal what sat underneath it. Concern, not for us, but for control. I left before she could regain it. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. I did not look devastated. I did not look angry. I looked focused, and that frightened me more than anything else. As the doors closed, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. Paul. I did not answer. Some stories begin with betrayal. This one began with the moment she looked at me and chose not to stop. I did not sleep that night. I did not pace or stare at the ceiling either. I sat in my car in the parking structure until morning, watching the garage lights cycle on and off while messages stacked up on my phone. I muted everything except calls. Silence felt safer than reaction. By 7, the building started waking up. Doors opened. Cars pulled out. Normal life continued above me like nothing had happened on the balcony a few hours earlier. That contrast made the situation clearer than any argument could have. I went back upstairs just after 8. Lena was already dressed. Not comfortable dressed, not defensive dressed. She looked like she was going somewhere important. Her posture was straight, her face composed, the apartment oddly tidy for a night that had collapsed in engagement. The couch cushions were aligned. The kitchen counter wiped clean. She had been busy while I was gone. She did not ask where I had been. She asked if we could talk, but she asked it the way someone asks to confirm a meeting they already scheduled. I did not sit down. She explained things without admitting much. She framed the night as an overlap, not a betrayal. She described Paul as a transition that started emotionally and then became physical when she realized we were no longer aligned. She spoke carefully, as if each sentence had been practiced in front of a mirror until it sounded reasonable enough to survive repetition. What stood out was what she did not say. She did not say she was sorry. She did not say it happened once. She did not say she panicked when I caught her. She spoke as if discovery was an inconvenience, not a disaster. The first interruption came quickly. The doorbell rang. She froze for a fraction of a second before recovering, which told me everything. She was expecting someone, just not yet. I opened the door. Marilyn stood there with a look that suggested she had already chosen her position before arriving. She stepped inside without asking and scanned the apartment the way people do when they are counting damage rather than looking for truth. Behind her was a man I recognized vaguely. Lena's co-worker, Toby Grant. I had seen him at work events and holiday gatherings. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed he belonged in the room. That was the moment the shape of the night changed. This was not damage control. This was a coordinated response. Marilyn spoke first. She asked if everyone was calm. She asked if things could stay respectful. The language was neutral, but the intent was clear. She was there to manage fallout, not to understand it. Toby tried to make himself useful immediately. He offered to step outside with me. He suggested giving Lena space. He positioned himself as a buffer. I declined. The four of us stood there, the apartment suddenly crowded with people who had not been present when the betrayal happened, but now wanted influence over how it would be remembered. Lena finally lost patience and accelerated the conversation herself. She admitted the relationship with Paul had been ongoing. She admitted it did not start last night. She said it started when she felt emotionally alone, a phrase she delivered smoothly, as if it carried automatic credibility. Then she made her mistake. She explained that Paul was not supposed to be permanent. That single sentence shifted the entire dynamic. Marilyn looked at her sharply. Toby stopped pretending he was just there as support. The implication hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Paul had been an option, not a choice. Lena continued, perhaps realizing too late that she had revealed more than intended. She described a process, not a relationship. She had been preparing to leave, preparing financially, preparing socially. She wanted to land safely before cutting ties. The word planning was never used, but it did not need to be. I asked one question. I asked how long Toby had known. He did not answer immediately. He glanced at Lena first, then at Marilyn, then back at me. That hesitation told me enough. He had known before the balcony, before the lie about me moving out, before the bag in the trunk. The conversation unraveled quickly after that. Marilyn tried to reframe it as confusion. Toby distanced himself subtly, adjusting his posture, stepping half a pace back as if realizing he was standing too close to something radioactive. Lena attempted to regain control, insisting that nothing had been decided yet, that she had not chosen anyone, that she had simply been preparing for possibilities. That explanation collapsed under its own weight. Preparing for possibilities meant rehearsing outcomes. It meant telling different people different versions of the truth. It meant using my absence as a convenience rather than an obstacle. I told them the engagement was over. I did not shout. I did not dramatize it. I stated it the way one states a legal fact. That was when Lena changed strategies. She shifted from explanation to urgency. She asked about the ring. She asked about the joint account. She asked what I planned to do next. Each question was framed as concern, but the pattern was unmistakable. She was calculating damage. I told her the ring was insured in my name. That stopped her. Her composure cracked just enough to show something raw underneath. Not grief. Panic. The ring was not sentimental to her anymore. It was leverage. Liquidity. A way to land softly. Marilyn reacted immediately, asking what that meant. I explained calmly that the ring could not be sold or transferred without my authorization. I explained that the policy was set up months ago, long before any of this, because it was the practical thing to do. The room shifted again. Toby took a step back toward the door. Lena tried to mask it, but the realization hit her hard. One of her exit routes had closed before she could use it. She accused me of being controlling. That accusation was clumsy and poorly timed. It did not land. I reminded her that she had tried to sell the ring weeks ago and failed. Her eyes flicked to Marilyn involuntarily, confirming what she had not intended to reveal. Marilyn's expression changed for the first time since arriving. The confidence drained out of it, replaced by something closer to alarm. She asked Lena whether that was true. Lena did not answer. That silence did more damage than any argument could have. The conversation spiraled after that. Explanations contradicted earlier claims. Justifications collapsed under follow-up questions. Toby excused himself soon after, citing work obligations that suddenly seemed urgent. He did not look back. Marilyn stayed longer, but her tone shifted from defensive to cautious. She began asking questions rather than making statements. She asked about timelines. She asked about money. She asked about what Lena had told their parents. That was when the next twist landed. Lena admitted she had already warned her parents about me. Not explicitly, not directly. She had framed it as concern. She told them I was distant, unpredictable, emotionally volatile. She said she was afraid of how I might react when things ended. She said it calmly, as if this was responsible behavior rather than narrative control. I understood then why Marilyn had arrived the way she did. They were already preparing a version of me that justified everything else. I told Marilyn she could verify anything she wanted. I told her the lease was in both our names. I told her the joint account was still active. I told her I had not moved out, planned to move out, or been informed that our engagement was ending. I did not need to convince her. The inconsistencies were doing that work for me. By the time Marilyn left, she was no longer certain which side she was on. Lena stood in the living room afterward. The confidence she started the morning with now fractured. She asked what I intended to do next. I told her I would be separating finances immediately. I told her I would be speaking to her parents directly. I told her she needed to find another place to stay. She asked how much time she had. I told her that was no longer my concern. As I gathered my remaining things, I noticed something else missing. Documents from a folder we kept for wedding planning. Vendor contracts. Deposits. Numbers that suddenly mattered. I realized then that this was not just emotional betrayal. This was financial misdirection layered underneath it. When I left the apartment that afternoon, I did not feel relief. I felt acceleration. Everything she had planned was unraveling faster than she could adapt, and she knew it. The carefully spaced exits were collapsing into a single narrow path. That night had started with a balcony. By morning, it had turned into a map of lies, backup plans, and people who were already scrambling to avoid being caught in the collapse. And I had not even spoken to her parents yet. I did not give Lena time to stabilize. That was intentional. Stories like hers only survive if they are allowed to settle. If people repeat them enough times, they harden into something believable. I moved before that could happen. I called her parents that afternoon. Not to accuse, not to confront. I asked if we could meet in person because there were financial matters tied to the engagement that needed to be addressed quickly. I kept my tone neutral, administrative, serious. They agreed almost immediately. That alone told me Lena had already primed them. People who expect chaos prepare for it. People who expect lies rush to control them. We met at their house early that evening. Lena arrived separately. She walked in already braced, shoulders tight, jaw set, eyes sharp in the way people look when they are preparing to defend territory rather than tell the truth. Her parents were polite, careful. They treated me like someone who might suddenly behave unpredictably if handled incorrectly. That framing irritated me, but I let it sit. I needed it to exist long enough to collapse on its own. Lena spoke first. She repeated a cleaner version of the story she had tried earlier. Emotional distance, growing apart, poor communication, a relationship that had quietly ended long before the balcony incident. She acknowledged poor judgment without admitting intent. She framed the affair as overlap rather than replacement. Her parents nodded slowly, absorbing it the way people do when they want peace more than accuracy. Then I spoke. I did not counter emotionally. I laid out a timeline. Dates, locations, overlaps. I explained that the lease was still active, that I had never moved out, that shared expenses were still being paid jointly until the morning after the balcony incident. I explained that wedding vendors were still under contract because no cancellation had ever been discussed. I explained that she had attempted to sell the engagement ring weeks earlier without telling anyone. That detail changed the room. Her father leaned forward slightly. Her mother stopped nodding. Lena shifted in her chair. I continued. I explained that Lena had been maintaining parallel narratives. One for me, one for Paul, one for her family, one for her co-workers. Each version designed to justify the next step when the previous one collapsed. I explained that the night I discovered her was not a rupture. It was a timing failure. Lena interrupted me then. She accused me of twisting things. She said I was cherry-picking details to make her look calculated. She said she felt unsafe confronting me directly, which was why she prepared privately. Her mother reacted immediately to that word. Unsafe. The weight of it landed heavy in the room. I let it. Then I asked Lena a single question. I asked her why she had packed an overnight bag for herself weeks before any supposed confrontation if she was afraid of me. She did not answer. Her mother turned to her slowly, confusion spreading across her face. Her father stared at Lena without speaking. I explained where the bag had been. I explained what was inside it. I explained that it had been packed neatly, not hastily, with items chosen for departure, not escape. That distinction mattered. The room shifted. Lena tried to redirect again, this time toward finances. She argued that the money she had moved belonged partly to her, that she had contributed emotionally and practically to the relationship. That planning for independence was reasonable. That was when I revealed the next piece. I explained that the joint wedding account had been temporarily frozen that morning after a transfer attempt flagged unusual activity. I explained that no money had been taken, but the attempt had been recorded. Her father asked how much. I told him. The number landed hard. Lena reacted immediately, insisting it was a misunderstanding, that she only wanted to protect herself. That phrase again. Protect herself. Her mother asked protect herself from what? Silence followed. I did not press. The absence of an answer was enough. By the time the meeting ended, Lena's parents were no longer defending her. They were no longer defending me either. They were reassessing everything they thought they knew. That reassessment was the real damage. The next escalation came from a direction I did not expect. Paul called me that night. I answered this time. He sounded nervous, unsteady. He asked if we could meet somewhere public. He said there were things he needed to clarify before his own situation got worse. We met at a quiet cafe near the building. He told me the truth quickly, as if speed might reduce consequences. He admitted Lena had promised him more than a relationship. She had told him that once things ended with me, she planned to formalize a business she had been developing on the side. A consulting operation. Small, but positioned to grow. She had told him he would be involved. What stunned me was not the promise. It was the funding. Paul explained that Lena had described the startup capital as shared savings. Money she had access to. Money she implied was already separate. It was not. It was partially mine. The realization hit cleanly. No confusion. No doubt. This was not just infidelity. This was misrepresentation with intent. Paul did not stay long after that. He realized, finally, that he had not been chosen. He had been scheduled. The next morning, I contacted the bank and formally separated accounts. I contacted the leasing office and began the process of removing Lena from the apartment legally. I contacted the wedding vendors and froze further action pending contract review. Each step triggered reactions. Lena called repeatedly, left messages that shifted tone each time. Defensive, pleading, strategic, angry, measured, desperate. I did not answer. Her parents called next. They did not ask me to fix things. They asked what Lena had done. That was the final confirmation that her narrative was no longer holding. I told them everything calmly. I told them I was not seeking revenge. I told them I was simply refusing to absorb consequences for decisions I did not make. They did not argue. That afternoon, Lena showed up at the apartment with Marilyn. They had boxes. Not many. Just enough to signal that this was supposed to be orderly. Controlled. The leasing office representative was already there. Lena protested. She argued that she needed time. She argued that the apartment was still partially hers. She argued that I was moving too fast. The representative explained that the paperwork was clear. The notice period was valid. The financial responsibility would transfer fully to me. Lena looked at Marilyn then, panic flashing across her face. Marilyn did not intervene. She had finally understood her role in this and wanted distance from the fallout. Lena packed silently. When she left, she did not look at me. The apartment felt larger afterward. Emptier. Not peaceful yet, but no longer contaminated by preparation. That evening, I received confirmation from the bank that no further transfer attempts could be made without my authorization. I received confirmation that the ring policy remained unchanged. I received confirmation that the lease adjustment was finalized. The consequences were no longer theoretical. Lena had lost control of her finances, her living situation, and her narrative within 48 hours. She had planned for a slow exit. She got a collapse instead, and the final part had not even started yet. The collapse did not end loudly. That surprised me. I expected shouting, dramatic confrontations, public scenes. Instead, what followed was quieter and heavier. The kind of fallout that does not announce itself but spreads through routines, finances, and relationships until there is nothing left to argue about. Lena stopped calling after the leasing office confirmed the change in writing. The silence that followed was not peace. It was resignation. I stayed in the apartment alone for the first time that night. No boxes. No leftover notes. No dramatic emptiness. Just absence. Her absence had weight, not echo. The balcony door remained closed. I did not open it. The next few days became administrative in a way that stripped emotion out of everything. Banks, vendors, insurers, property management. Every conversation was calm, factual, documented. Each confirmation email felt like a small nail sealing something shut. Her parents reached out once more. They asked if we could meet again. I agreed, not because I owed them closure, but because unfinished conversations have a way of resurfacing later when they are harder to manage. We met at their house again. Lena was not there. That was intentional. They did not defend her this time. They did not accuse me. They asked direct questions about money, about timelines, about whether anything else was likely to surface. People asked those questions when they realized the story they believed was incomplete. I told them the truth as plainly as possible. I told them I had no intention of pursuing legal action beyond protecting what was mine. I told them I would not interfere in their relationship with their daughter. I told them I was stepping away completely. Her father nodded slowly. Her mother looked exhausted. They did not apologize for believing her version first. They did not need to. The way they spoke about her now carried disappointment rather than justification. That was consequence enough. Paul vanished from the situation almost immediately after that. He moved out of the building within a week. No forwarding address posted. No farewell messages. No explanation offered. People do not linger when they realize they were a contingency plan rather than a choice. Toby sent one short message apologizing for being involved at all. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not attempt to explain himself. The message felt less like guilt and more like self-preservation. I did not respond. Marilyn reached out once. She said she had not known everything, that she had believed she was helping her sister land safely, that she did not realize how much manipulation was involved until it was already collapsing. I believed her. That belief did not change anything. I thanked her for telling the truth when it mattered and told her I was done discussing it. She respected that boundary immediately. That told me more than her explanation ever could. Lena attempted one final maneuver 2 weeks later. She sent a message asking if we could reset the conversation and talk through things more calmly now that emotions had settled. The phrasing was familiar. It was the same language she used when trying to reframe outcomes that did not go her way. I did not reply. The consequences were already locked in. Conversations could not change them. The wedding vendors began releasing deposits according to contract terms. Some money was lost. That was unavoidable. The losses were finite and predictable. They did not compound. That mattered. The ring remained in my possession. I had it appraised again, not because I intended to sell it immediately, but because it marked the end of something that needed documentation. The appraisal came back consistent with the original. Value unchanged. Meaning unchanged. I placed it in a safe deposit box and stopped thinking about it. Work became easier. That surprised me too. Without the background noise of managing someone else's narrative, my focus sharpened. Conversations became shorter. Decisions became cleaner. The constant low-level negotiation that had existed in my personal life disappeared. and with it went an exhaustion I had mistaken for normal stress. People at work asked questions indirectly. They noticed the engagement ring was gone. They noticed Lena was no longer around. I did not elaborate. I said it ended and left it there. No one pressed. That was the final confirmation that the version of events Lena had tried to circulate never took hold fully. People sense instability in stories even when they cannot articulate why. A month after everything ended, I attended the building's lease renewal meeting. Lena's name was no longer on the documents. The apartment was officially mine. The property manager spoke to me the way she speaks to long-term tenants who are no longer part of internal drama. I signed. When I returned upstairs afterward, I opened the balcony door for the first time since that night. The city sounded the same as it always had. Traffic below, voices drifting upward, music somewhere far off. Nothing dramatic waited for me outside. No symbolic closure. No final realization. Just space. That was enough. Lena moved back in with her parents temporarily. That was not something I learned directly. Marilyn mentioned it once, carefully, as if gauging whether the information mattered to me. It did not. Her consulting project dissolved quietly, without access to shared funds, and without a partner willing to commit after realizing the situation he had stepped into. It never gained traction. There was no public failure, just an absence of progress. Those are the kinds of consequences that linger. They do not announce themselves. They follow you into future decisions. Months passed. The apartment changed slowly. Furniture rearranged. New routines formed. The balcony became just a balcony again. A piece of architecture, not a turning point. I stopped replaying the moment she looked at me and did not stop. Not because it stopped mattering, but because it stopped controlling anything. She had prepared for a smooth exit. She had prepared narratives, backups, contingencies. What she did not prepare for was exposure before execution. The outcome was not dramatic. It was permanent.